Welcome to Healthcare du Jour, where we dish up and digest the latest in healthcare. For the next 30 minutes, sit back as we bring you insight, commentary, and discussion on trending topics to the table, all expertly served up by our host and his guests. Now here's your host, Matt Fisher.
Welcome back, and thank you for joining as we dive into the hottest topics in healthcare. I'm your host, Matt Fisher. On the menu today is Andra Bria, Marketing Manager at Medicai. Andra, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Matt. I'm happy to be here.
So, Andra, what I always like to do before getting into the main part of the conversation is give my guest a chance to provide more of an introduction in terms of who they are and what they do. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks. Hey, everyone. My name is Andra Bria. I am a marketing manager at Medicai, and my formation is in marketing and digital product development. I have also studied and have a special interest in social policy, equity and inclusion, things like that. And I like to think that I have embedded these beliefs throughout my work, be it personal projects or when working with different startups, most often in industries like education or healthcare. And at Medicai, I'm spearheading marketing and communication efforts. And also, maybe we can share what Medicai is and what we're doing there. So Medicai is a health tech startup, which is building an easier way to access, retrieve, visualize, and share medical imaging data, both for patients and providers. And Medicai's software components, enable better coordination and collaboration between providers. So yeah, thanks. And I'm looking forward to diving deeper into some of these topics.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot to unpack with all those topics. But kind of another question I always like to ask to get things going is, what got you into healthcare in the first place? Because if you're talking about a lot about kind of social equity and those values, those seem to align very well with healthcare.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, a few years ago, I was working with a healthcare recruitment platform. And then 2 years ago, I joined Medicai, which at the same time, this coincided with a personal experience within the healthcare system that kind of allowed me to gain more insight and also provided me with a better understanding and perspective about what I would need as a patient and what could potentially be improved. So I found some of these challenges identified by others as well, and working at Medicai allowed me to visualize how technology could offer not necessarily a solution, but help where is possible and offer alternatives, ways to solve some of these challenges.
Yeah, and kind of those challenges you're talking about, as you said, it sounded like you had some personal experience with the healthcare system that helped you realize what they were. But can you give us examples of what some of those challenges are, and then how you see solutions starting to develop to maybe help resolve them?
Yeah, for sure. I think so. One would be access to data, access to personal health data, and also I'm seeing the need for better coordination, because when a certain medical event is happening, there might be the need for different stakeholders to work together, and this is why I think coordination is increasingly important, not just inside of an organization like a hospital, but also when working with outside your healthcare organizations in the continuum of care. Speaking about access to data, I think from a patient perspective, for example, we can, most of us can relate with a situation where if you have recently done a medical imaging investigation, like an MRI, a CT, an ultrasound, you've been handed over a CD with the images if you've been given this data. And if you want to go to the next provider, which will take care which will take you to the next stage of your care journey, or if you want to access a second opinion, you need to share your scans. And if you have a CD, you have to physically transport it from one physician to another. Or if you manage to save it on a computer, you have to use WeTransfer to transfer the images, which is not really a compliant service for healthcare. And I think these barriers, and if the geographical location between providers is also an issue, that creates even more barriers. And this only results in delays in care. And I don't think it really makes sense in an era where we have almost everything digitized. I mean, in tech, you can instantly share data with another person with your Drive, Google Drive. Why wouldn't this be possible in healthcare as well? So yeah, I think so. This from a patient perspective, from a physician perspective, and what we've been working at Medicai, what we've seen, and from our discussions with other stakeholders and other organizations in the system, it seems like there are current solutions that are used, for example, to visualize these images. They are called PACS systems. Most of them are available just inside of that hospital, for example. And these on-premise systems really offer security, but only people inside the organization can access the data. And you need to be at the radiology department to see the images. And if you collaborate with a physician from another organization, and let's say you are a specialized clinic and like an orthopedic center, and you want to retrieve the images from a diagnostic imaging center, the road is pretty bumpy. Don't really it's not very smooth. And I've been also reading something really interesting by on LinkedIn, which said that the current system can be incredibly. They said that this is a professor of medicine. It's wild how healthcare can feel both extraordinarily futuristic and archaic at the same time. And I think that when it comes to tools like software tools and when using technology, I think that we need to look at these and see what solutions we adopt, so that they're not necessarily they need to be adapted to current times. They need to be light, they need to be flexible, they need to sort of upgrade healthcare, just like we upgraded and digitized instantly all the other sectors like travel, entertainment.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of ground that you just covered there, and kind of definitely encapsulates, I think, a lot of the issues around data access and exchange and interaction that are frequently cited across the industry. So I guess maybe picking up on the access point first, I like the example you gave of highlighting with imaging data of maybe you got the CD, and I think you also kind of slipped it in there. That's if you even got that. What kind of barriers are you seeing just generally on that access front? Are people usually being given that data, or is it that you're having to remember to request it? And then if you do request it, are you actually getting it when you want it?
This is such a good question. And it triggers me from a certain point of view, because at times I had to request it, and at times I've been given the data, the CDs, but what I think is true both for patients and providers is how the simple idea that you need to have this data when you need it, like where you need it at the point of care. So for I'm just thinking about the idea that I, I I heard I heard at some point an entrepreneur saying that technology needs to be invisible. And that means that I can only relate to, like, I can share from my experience in health tech. And I think that if we want to improve something in the health tech industry with the technologies that we use, it helps to remember this, that technology needs to be invisible, and especially in a sector like healthcare, because this means that we need our software systems to be really able to facilitate care at a better speed, and without like doctors or like patients sensing that technology is there, like especially for doctors when they need to coordinate or rapidly access a certain information, they should be able to have that data when they need it, and not necessarily perform another action like look for it or like search for it. And especially if we think about like physical records, right? They go to the archive and like search with myriads of files and folders. You need to be able to retrieve that data instantly. And this holds true also in imaging. If we talk about like orthopedics care, for example, in orthopedics, if you have like an event like a knee surgery, there are multiple stakeholders involved. So they're like physician services, traditional services, diagnostic imaging, physical therapy, surgical care, post-op rehabilitation, and so on. And most of these stakeholders would need imaging data at some point to look at images, right? So ideally, you would want a world where you can have this data instantly, not needing to look for it, not needing to ask the patient for it, or like make the patient do a repeat test if you don't have the image at the point at that point. So how can we enable this data access and exchange to happen? So this is some of the things that at Medicai Medicai is also looking at. How can we create those connective tissues and those bridges, let's say, to enable for data to just flow freely in the continuum of care?
That raises a lot of great points. And as you were saying, it's you never have just one team in isolation that is involved in an individual's care. It's always bringing together multiple stakeholders. And as you're indicating, typically those stakeholders are in different organizations or different places. You want to ensure that everyone has access to the data. And for those of you just joining, I'm talking with Andra Bria from Medicai. And we've talked a lot about access. And, Andrew, the last point you were talking about is, and I really like this phrasing, especially kind of given the examples you were giving, but that connective tissue to enable that interchange of data. So from your perspective, what is that connective tissue? And, does that mean ripping and replacing systems, or does it mean kind of building on top of an existing system and introducing new functionality to make those systems the existing systems operate better?
Yeah, thanks for this question. I think this is spot on. We are looking at, and we offer a suite of software solutions and components, and we're not the only ones who are doing this. There are other players in the industry who are proposing tech solutions to some of these issues. But I think there will be a case where, because looking back at the previous example in orthopedics care, I think there would be a need to simplify the tools that you already have, or adapt these tools, upgrade them, not necessarily replacing them, because this might be too big of a change all of a sudden, but potentially upgrading them iteratively, or adapting or augmenting the tools that you already have with ones that allow for easy integration and communication with one another. For example, at Medicai, this is why we're offering the imaging API, which brings a super easy layer to coordinate around imaging. So I think there is a lot of talk in health tech about interoperability, but I think this is mostly about how we allow for systems to communicate better with each other and leave the data to flow seamlessly, and to create more pathways for data exchange, a secure and compliant data exchange.
Yeah, no, and that's raising, or helping to raise and refocus on, by enabling those interchange and exchanges, that, kind of goes back to the points you were making earlier, which is that improves patient care, because then you're allowing the teams to, have access and be able to utilize that data on a timely basis when and where needed. What are the challenges that you're seeing of getting folks to actually take up those solutions and be able to drive towards that outcome, which optimistically we're all trying to achieve?
I think there are, of course, issues around the costs of updating the current infrastructure. But I think that if we are aiming towards transitioning to a value-based care system, and bringing more value into the care that we offer to our patients, I think this would be much easier if the systems that we use are updated in such a way that they allow for this value. And I think when we talk about value-based care, I think coordination is a keyword. And coordination can only happen when everyone in the care team, in the multidisciplinary team, has better access to data. So this brings us again to data access. But yeah, some of these challenges are, of course, updating your infrastructure, the cost of updating your infrastructure. And again, you don't have to totally replace what you have, but you can also find ways to upgrade it. And another hurdle, I think, it would be probably the reluctance to share data due to competitive concerns. And maybe here, I think discussing about these topics and coming together and as an industry and putting this on the table and seeing the benefits versus the reluctance to share data, I think it would be useful. And also there are still issues with systems that are not built as interoperable, and it's hard to build and augment those systems if they're not necessarily conceived this way. But as I've said, there are ways to do it, and it doesn't have to cost you a fortune.
Yeah, kind of referencing that reluctance and the potential concern over competitive edge, I suspect I'll kind of would be touching on a little bit of a nerve there, because even though one would hope that in healthcare, the patient's at the center and you're aiming to enable the best care and best outcomes at all times. There is still going to be kind of that natural business inclination of, well, I need to maximize my place in the industry. And, I think that's probably a very tough psychological position to overcome, even in an industry where it does feel like there is enough for every organization to be able to play a role and play a productive role.
Yeah, that's true. I think probably this is also an issue like mentality or culture and change management. But yeah, I haven't yet found an answer to this.
Yeah, no, it's kind of stating that you haven't found an answer seems to also just reflect the industry as a whole. Although then, arguably that kind of goes back to the point you were making a few minutes ago of, while cost of updating or the cost of changing your infrastructure might be perceived as a barrier, you then also suggested that value-based care and the need for coordination there could be a spur to change that perception or that perspective on it, because without coordination, it's really going to be difficult to succeed in value-based care, because that is about bringing everyone in the care continuum together to focus on driving better outcomes.
Yeah, and I think at some point my colleague Mircha said something that really rang a bell, was like, it's hard to build new financial models with like an infrastructure that is not really upgraded. So yeah.
Yeah. So kind of with that understanding, what steps do you think could help drive, or what immediate kind of changes in the system do you think could be implemented or perceived that would help encourage that change and create better better access and better connection of systems?
I think it's all about taking it step by step. As I said, it doesn't need to be a radical change. You can also start with a smaller change. As I've said, like we work with composable architecture, so like modules that can be easily embedded, and like you can have like, if you want to access imaging, you can start with embedding a DICOM viewer and see how it works. And then you can do, of course, you can do more complex things. You can then add analytics or like AI, but I think you need to take it step by step and measure it. I think it's a lot about you need to also become a little bit data driven and learn to start measuring what you're implementing and see how it works, what are the results, and also see what can be automated in your organization. Because again, we've seen like super easily how tools like different automation tools we adopted in our day-to-day life, and of course this can be true for healthcare as well. And when talking about like infrastructure for medical imaging, you can also automate workflows. It doesn't have to be like a very heavy. You don't have to be like a super knowledgeable person about like terms like DICOM or like very specific technical terms. Like, what I'm saying is that these kind of technologies and software are also becoming more and more adapted to our current days, and are more lightweight, are more plug and play, so more flexible pricing and so on.
Yeah, no, kind of that's, as you said, that step-by-step approach, and just the fact that the tools and the systems are becoming more approachable and kind of consistent with how we utilize them in other areas is very beneficial. But Andrew, believe it or not, we're already almost out of time. So I'm going to close with one final question, which is becoming a bit of a popular one that I like to do recently, which is, if you had a magic wand, what immediate change would you make to the healthcare system?
Thanks for this question. I wrote something at the beginning of the year, which still holds true. And it was around like not what necessarily I would change, but what I'm like feeling hopeful for. And I think that we're heading to system where like healthcare is becoming more about like shared decision making between patients and providers, and more like open discussion and like collaboration between patients and providers. And I'm hoping healthcare will become more empowering to the patient. And this also like the tools that we have, and that the tech tools that will help physicians be more. I'm hoping that the tools that we have, that many of them might be able to automate some of the tasks, and will be able to basically, I think the ultimate goal of all like the tech tools that we use and that we adopt in healthcare as well, is to keep medicine more humane and empathetic. And last but not least, the sector becoming even more swift and agile and adaptable. And this will be possible with collaboration, like human to human, as I've said, like coordination, collaboration, but also human to machine. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great vision, and hopefully a lot to be optimistic for. But as I said, believe it or not, we are already out of time. So I want to thank my guest, Andra Bria, for a great conversation today.
Thank you so much, Matt, for inviting me. And thank you for the discussion. This was super nice. Yeah, I'm hoping, please, if you're listening to this and you have questions, suggestions, if you want to argue with some of the stuff that I've said, or if you have like proposals, improvements, please reach out. I'm available at andra.bria@medicai.org, or check the website, medicai.io. And thank you again.
And thank you to everyone listening. As Andrew said, can keep the dialogue going with her, or you can connect with me at #HCDEJURE. I'm Matt Fisher. Until next time.